Good afternoon and welcome to the 2015 Annual Meeting's flagship event, Young Entrepreneurs as Drivers of Sustainable Growth. My name is Steven Jackson from the World Bank. Join me in welcoming the panelists. Jim Young Kim, Sean Penn, Maria Costa, Alan Blue, Blanca Trevino, Ashish Thakkar, and Antonio Caño. This event is being live streamed on World Bank Live in English at live.worldbank.org and in Spanish at envivo.bancomundial.org. We invite you to participate in the live chat, so please submit your questions online. Also follow the conversation in Twitter at #YouthBiz, that is with a Z, or Soy Emprendedor. So today's moderator is Antonio Caño, who is the editor-in-chief of the major global newspaper in Spanish, El País, which is the top news reference in the Spanish-speaking world. He is also a regular speaker on Latin American and foreign affairs in major US, Latin America, and European television programs and conferences. So I turn over today's proceedings to Mr. Caño.
Gracias. Muchas gracias a todos por su asistencia, gracias a los panelistas por aceptar esta invitación. Quería extender las gracias a Perú, a la ciudad de Lima, a la acogida que nos está...
That is receiving us for the magnificent way in which we have been received by them. I want to thank the bank and the staff of the World Bank. They are all contributing to the smoothest way of doing our business. It's extraordinary. Everything is fantastic, and we can only say that things are going very well. We've come here to open a dialogue, a very important dialogue, and for this I'd like to congratulate in your name, Jin, to all the bank for this initiative that consists in sitting these people around the table in order to speak about something that is so important as youth and entrepreneurship. Everything that we've been speaking about in Lima these last days and all that is still left to decide and speak about would be useless if we cannot manage to involve young entrepreneurs. These young people of today must be those who will lead the future. Very soon the future will be in their hands, so it is absolutely necessary to involve them in this effort so that every project, every idea that is being carried out now will continue in time. And our thanks to Jim are due not only because of this meeting that is really the fruit of a very long effort, constant effort of the World Bank under your leadership. These efforts have obtained to create an agenda dedicated to progress for young people, and that is a very essential part of the work of the bank right now. We'll try to carry out a debate in a very open way. We want you to, besides learning some things, you might also have fun. The level of the panelists that are with you, I'm sure, guarantee that this will happen. And I also would like to invite the panelists to not to consider this as a session of Q&A, but rather to start engaging in a conversation. So in any moment in which they would like to intervene, please do so. We will also have the participation with questions. The people who are following us online, the public at large that is following us online, and Jim will have to leave more or less halfway because he has other commitments. but we will try to do our best to make him speak and tell us very interesting things and news if possible. In any case, the moderator, as you know, is a journalist, so I'm going to try to get some news for the world today. Before opening our conversation, we have a video, very short one, brief minutes in which we are going to see how this meeting came to be. A group of consultants, the Young American Business Trust, has been working during months, carrying out interviews with about 400 entrepreneurs in 43 countries around the world in order to try and reach some conclusions that we may use when we debate, and to use them as a guideline or orientation of our debate. So if you agree, we'll begin with the video, and after that I will start introducing the panelists that everybody knows really. So they will not need much introduction from me. Let's see the video now.
El vídeo, ¿quién?
Set up sustainable economic activity that not only empowers us, but enables us to empower others.
Lo que buscamos es que cada joven sea la solución de sus realidades y dentro de sus países.
Creando nuevos puestos de empleo, exportando.
As an entrepreneur, I've learned how to be tenacious, to be resilient, and to be patient.
We all have to know what is happening to create solutions.
Somos una generación en donde no tenemos que mentir y nos gusta saber la verdad. Entonces, no importa lo que se tenga que decir, todos ganamos o todos perdemos, pero el chiste es jugar bien.
Finding needs and filling those needs, one customer at a time.
Me gustaría que la gente que conozca sobre el concepto que manejamos se sienta capaz o se sienta incentivado para ser un líder y gestionar ellos su propio movimiento.
Anything that happens, no matter good or bad, there's always something to be learned.
And of course, believe in yourself.
Debes resistir, insistir y persistir.
You have to be relevant in your industry by understanding the trends in the industry.
Para nosotros el programa Startup Perú nos ha ayudado mucho a impulsar nuestro emprendimiento.
There is one thing that largely supports entrepreneurship in Pakistan, and that is the State Bank of Pakistan.
Un grave problema es el tema que no se les da seguimiento. Cuando cambian de gobierno, inician desde cero.
A universidade de Harvard teve papel muito grande.
Existen programas, pero muchas veces no los conocemos.
Jóvenes como nosotros, como ustedes, sí podemos realizar el cambio. Atrévanse más.
Well, as I said before, it's a brief introduction because everybody knows these very talented and famous people. From my left is Alan Blue. Alan Blue is the co-founder of LinkedIn. We have been talking for a few minutes before this meeting, and we've been discussing how LinkedIn should be pronounced. So maybe the first thing we're going to learn here is how do you have to pronounce LinkedIn?
I think you're pronouncing it perfectly.
Okay. Okay, LinkedIn is the Vice President of Product Management in LinkedIn. I mean, he's responsible of the LinkedIn groups, news, influencers, stream and communication products. So you know that he's a very interesting person. Mariana es co-founder de Laboratoria. Laboratoria es un experimento real.
Laboratoria is a very interesting experiment that helps many women to become digital developers, and she's going to speak to us about what she does. And in our previous conversation, as I said, she explained to us all the passion she puts in this work that she carries out. Passion is one of the things I'd like us to speak about in this conversation. Maybe we'll manage to give this idea to the young people who are listening to us here and all around the world. Jane?
So you know him very well, and two-time Academy Award winner, and the reason for all this mess that we see here, Champagne is well known as an icon of the movies industry, but he's also very well known for his humanitarian mission, especially in Haiti. We're going to speak about Haiti later, Sean. We want to tell us about your experience in Haiti, which is really admirable. Blanca is
Blanca Treviño, she's Mexican. I've been speaking with her too. She is the director of a company that is enormous today. She has offices in more than 50 countries, but she tells me that this is a company with Mexican essence, like she is, that is very evident in her character and the way she does her business, and the success she has of this soft tech, which is her business. And she's going to tell us about it. Ashish?
Many people in Africa and all around the world. Ashish has written a book recently called The Lion. Could you refresh my memory about the title of the...
The Lion Awakes.
Okay. Which has been, it's like a Bible for a lot of young entrepreneurs in Africa and all around. We'll speak about your work later. And como estaba diciendo,
as I was saying, I'd like to begin listening to interventions where I want to hear your passion, your personal experience. And I will ask you some questions, and then you may reply if you think that the question is interesting, or otherwise you tell us what is really interesting for you. And I'm sure that it will be much more interesting for all of us. Joel Omegin, I'll start. Voy a empezar contigo.
Here, you're going to have to leave before, so we're going to give you some more time before you leave.
I'll stay as long as until they pull me out. So we'll go ahead.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Tell us in more general terms about this project, about young entrepreneurs, about youth, and how youth is part of your work and the work of the bank right now.
You know, I've been a professor for most of my adult life, and I ran a university for a while, and so I'm often asked, what's your advice to young people? And it hit me as we were walking in here. My advice to young people is become an actor, win 2 Academy Awards, marry a rock star, and then find the poorest country on earth and do revolutionary things there. This is what you need to do, okay? That's my advice now. Now, everybody here has done fantastic things. I mean, they really have. I just have to tell you that, the thing I've been most impressed with, I actually visited some of Sean's projects in Haiti. And if any of you have been to Haiti, it's the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. It is incredibly difficult. I've worked there since 1987. And it's great that of all the things that Sean could be doing, he's here with us, Alan, everybody on this panel. So, here's just some quick thoughts. So, I've been working with young people for forever, and they're always asking me, what should I do next? How can I get involved? There are a bunch of things that are really important, especially if you look at what Ashish has done, and in Africa, if you look at what other young entrepreneurs have done to build businesses, there's just some things that we need to put in place so that young people can reach their potential first. Many countries have terrible policies for young people. For example, the country of my birth, Korea. If you become an entrepreneur and you lose money or you default on a loan, not only can they go after you, but they can go after your whole extended family, including your cousins. So that is a huge break on entrepreneurship because your whole extended family every weekend is telling you, don't do this, forget about it. So we have to have policies that really not only support, but even push forward entrepreneurship so that you can take chances. The other thing is just access to capital. I mean, it's getting more and more difficult in developing countries to get access to capital, even for governments. So you can imagine the struggles that young entrepreneurs are going to face in Africa, in Latin America. We have got to make sure that there are systems in place so that young people who want to start their own businesses can get access to capital. Another thing, there's some really great groups around who are providing very specific technical assistance. If you go to the great consulting companies like McKinsey and Bain, they'll talk to you about strategy and they'll give you all kinds of data. What really entrepreneurs need is very simple technical advice. And we've begun working at IFC with different groups that are providing the kind of advice that will help people grow small businesses. Very few people come out of the womb knowing how to start and maintain a business. That kind of advice is really, really important. But the one thing that, if the young people in the audience online, wherever, if I can just say one thing, there are a lot of bad things that are going to happen to this planet, that are going to happen to poor people, unless the young people insist that us old people not spoil their future in the way we're currently spoiling your future. You've got to wake up to what this world is going to look like in 2030, 2040, 2050 if we don't take measures right now. Some of it has to do with equality of opportunity. Some of it has to do with economic growth that will allow everyone to have a chance in life. There is this problem. We have 26% of all children in developing countries are stunted, meaning that the development of their brains physically is not normal. They don't have the same number of neuronal connections as those children who are not stunted. Stunted means low height for age, meaning that the lack of stimulation and lack of nutrition has caused permanent damage. If we don't get busy taking care of a problem like stunting right now and literally handicapping 26% of young people with the inability to learn fully, if we don't tackle climate change right now and change completely the way we build infrastructure, the way we supply energy, if we don't do those things, your world is going to look so different from the way the world looks today. So do your homework, find something that you're passionate about, and then cultivate in yourself a very productive, a very what's the right word? A very focused kind of righteous anger that will help you tackle issues. Everyone on this panel has tackled them because a lot's at stake. If we don't have an agreement in December of this year for climate change, a 20-year-old, when you're 40, you're going to be looking at a world that is fundamentally different from the world today. Get involved, get engaged. For those of us who are making policy, for those of us who have access to capital, make sure that the environment is right for young people. But everything relies on young people getting engaged and getting engaged right now.
Jim, you mentioned young people in the audience. If we imagine that one of these young people in the audience come here and said, okay, Mr. President, I have an idea, I have the passion to build something, but considering the not very good prediction that the bank has made in this week, considering that the prediction is that the economy is not going to grow very much, how can I manage my idea and my passion? And to you personally, imagine that he say, Mr. President, how are you going to help me? How the institutions, how your bank, how the public institutions are going to help me?
So, the banks like us, like the Inter-American Development Bank, other multilateral development banks, are always playing a counter-cyclical role. In other words, when all of the capital is leaving emerging markets, we come in and we increase what we do. And that's what we're facing right now. The demand for capital and support from us is really very high, and it's going to get higher. And in the private sector, and some of my colleagues from the private sector part of the bank are here, We have been making a lot more loans to financial intermediaries because the IFC, our International Finance Corporation, is just too big to be able to give a loan of $10,000 or $20,000 to these small entrepreneurs. But we support other, local financial institutions to be able to do that. We have programs that very specifically focus on young people. Now, we don't have them everywhere. Nena, one of our vice presidents, is here. We don't have them everywhere, but we're really focused on trying to increase access. I mean, the best-selling book from Thomas Piketty, The Capital in the 21st Century, argued that inequality will always increase because capital always grows faster than incomes. And that's true, and it's at least been true for the period that Piketty looked at. And so, what do you do? Do you just sort of wring your hands and say, "Oh my God, inequality is going to get worse"? Our approach is to say, well, we're a bank. We actually have access to a lot of capital. We lend $65 billion last year. And so many have said that, one, capital is a coward, and two, capital has no moral compass, right? So, and that's probably as it should be. But we have capital. We have to be courageous, and we have to have a moral compass. And the way we're going to use our moral compass is to say, in these times, we have to work even harder to give access to capital to the people who traditionally haven't had access to it. So this is really what we're doing. And we're doing things, and it's risky, and people have criticized us for this, but we're trying everything we can to get capital to the level of young entrepreneurs in communities like Caraballo, where I worked for many years. And that's not easy to do, but that is our commitment.
Sham, you have a first-hand experience in Haiti, so you probably hear the word need and help very often. Why don't you tell us about your experience in Haiti? Have you think that we and the international institutions are helping in that kind of situations?
Well, I'd suggest that, one of the things in the timing of my getting involved in Haiti was, for me, kind of the discovery that what I feel is often an indulgent use of interconnectivity and social networking in comfort nations has laid out an extraordinary opportunity for entrepreneurs in developing countries. That there is a population that I would call primed. As a sort of quasi-entrepreneur in Haiti myself, in the sense of creating a nonprofit organization, and the sort of organization that, if sustainable, is only destructive, and what you hope to leave behind is that which is sustainable without you. I can tell, a story that young entrepreneurs should know. I had early on, during the emergency phase, right after the earthquake, blindly bought a couple of mobile X-ray machines. I figured that our clinic would need it at some point when we were able to get someone in who could train in the use of it, but there was one that was immediately urgent at the Guesquio Hospital downtown. So as we took it by truck at 2 o'clock in the morning across Port-au-Prince to the Guesquio Clinic, I remember coming back. We took the one, leaving the other behind at our tent camp. And it took about 3 hours to deliver it and bring it back. And I remember paying a visit to the tent hospital, and as I was walking out, seeing an X-ray photograph on the wall. And I asked where that had come from. And one of our 26-year-old volunteers had read the manual, and they were already taking X-rays on patients 3 hours after it arrived. The next day, we had someone from Guesquio come up to make sure they were doing it safely, and evidently they were doing it right by the book. So what does that tell me about the climate for entrepreneurs? The climate for entrepreneurs is that because of interconnectivity, because of the hunger, and now the exposure and the ability for people around the world and in these developing countries to have access to what dreams may be, it is probably the greatest moment of opportunity for young entrepreneurship. And also, when we think about, for example, our organization in its effort to get out of the aid business of what's called in Haiti the Republic of NGOs, which it really is. And I think that by and large, the the NGOs probably have done at least equal part damage to good in their efforts around the world. And so much of that has to do with understanding when it is that which is considered capitalist or otherwise is actually the greatest humanitarian and most participatory and invested in medicine that any developing country to have, which is true investment, true opportunity. And so one of the things we've moved to out of one's frustration in working in filling gaps where there just isn't the proper infrastructure and sort of on the treadmill of trying to move forward has been a focus on agroforestry, a focus on that which will create a middle class and turn an entirely import-dependent country into a great exporter. So as our organization moves forward and we look at what investment we make, we've now, with the great support and leadership of President Hollande, with Sean Parker on the entrepreneurial advisement side, with our organization, with the environmental minister and Minister Pierre in Haiti, and President of Haiti, moving forward with a 10-year agro-reforestation project. And what we find in moving that forward is an extraordinary amount of opportunities for entrepreneurs when these kind of climate-oriented and export-oriented projects are done and done robustly, that it becomes holistically a kind of breeding ground of opportunities for young entrepreneurs, because so much of it is going to be related to switching from the use of charcoal to green technologies to solar ovens and so on and so forth. So it's, you know, I come here as a salesman for a cheerleader for young entrepreneurship in these countries, and not to be dissuaded by the idea that you know, you're gonna, you know, it's not necessarily a bad thing when somebody's making $1.25 today to start them off at $5 a day and let them organize when they get productive.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned the President of Haiti. Your experience, you need collaboration of the government in the kind of investment you make in Brazil. You need the collaboration of the government for the kind of mission you have in Haiti.
Yeah, well, we've had great cooperation on a leadership level. It's no secret that there's, you know, that it's a complicated bureaucracy. We've had great partnerships, for example, with the World Bank, where we were able to relocate a camp of 60,000. But you know, it's a day-to-day learning experience working with the governmental structures, but it's also the only way that you're going to create sustainable change.
You have to start. You do something different in Haiti?
Say again, to do something different?
Would you do something different in Haiti? You have to start your investment again?
Well, would I do something different if I had to start it all over again? Yeah, I would have fired myself as country director about 6 months earlier.
Thank you. Thank you. Alan, you're coming from Silicon Valley, so you are the tech guy here in this panel. Tell us about tech and how technology can help the young entrepreneurs.
So I was really interested in the comments about how the World Bank might actually be able to increase the ability to drive funding for entrepreneurs, which is a tremendously important thing, because for a lot of entrepreneurship, you have to have capital in order to make it work, and substantial amounts of capital. But there's been another change which has occurred over the last 15 years, and it's basically that the tools you need to be a certain kind of entrepreneur are now incredibly cheap. So when we started LinkedIn, this was in 2002 and 2003, we've spent about $800,000 starting LinkedIn. If you were to try to build the product today, you could do it for $50,000. And the reason is that all of the things that we had to build especially all the technology we had to actually purchase, all of the payment systems which we had to develop on our own, are now off-the-shelf components, which you can essentially get for free. So any entrepreneur who's out there, I would highly recommend you start tonight building an app on Android or iPhone. And the reason is that you can literally have a company up and operating within 2 or 3 weeks and learn what it means to be an entrepreneur. The single most important indicator for being a successful entrepreneur is doing it more than once. So literally, if you can do and fail very cheaply with a couple of iPhone apps, then you can go out and start something with all those lessons and all that experience already under your belt, and you're much more likely to actually be able to succeed. So the technology that Silicon Valley runs on today is now being adopted everywhere. I was amazed with the video because I don't recognize those specific people, but I have met those people everywhere in the world. So whether it be in Dubai or in Jordan, in Beijing, I was literally in Beijing 4 weeks ago, and it could not have looked more like Silicon Valley. The people who surrounded us were the same excited, passionate technology entrepreneurs. That ability is now available to anyone who has a smartphone anywhere in the world. And that's now a very large percentage of the human population.
Thank you. Mariana, hasta ahora hemos estado hablando de jóvenes emprendedores. Ahora vamos
Talking about young entrepreneurs. Now let us talk with one amongst these young entrepreneurs. I believe that in over a year, you have turned in a startup into a very solvent and quite useful company. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your project and about what you've done? Let me tell you a little bit. Well, unfortunately, Kim's advice reached me like a little bit late because, well, I've turned into a social entrepreneur. This has been, it has definitely exceeded my expectations. We started, as Alan said, with something really simple. We started with a company that was just offering web development services because this is one of the skills that one of my partners had. So we all started, all three of us, from one day to the other, quite simply. We started in Peru, which is a country that still allows you to have a cheap start. And through the experience, we learned that there's a very high demand for web designers, that there are very few women in the industry. This is a global problem. And of course, in Latin America, this is quite evident. So just to put a diverse team is quite complicated. And the third thing that we identified is that everybody involved in technologies is, do something that is not that traditional, because this allows you, on the one hand, to have a very good and sound career without going through university and having obtained a degree. There are different models to develop developers in a short period of time in a particular skill. And once you have this particular skill, you can just start working. So we said, why don't we tackle a social problem in Latin America, which is the lack of opportunities for young women coming from low-income households? So we turned a problem into opportunity. This lack of opportunities was turned into possibility of taking advantage of this technology and help young people to start programming and turn into entrepreneurs in an industry that does have a very promising future. So instead of being just consuming technology, they're going to be able to create technology. Well, thank you very much. I don't know whether Blanca just finds herself in the work that Mariana is doing. Perhaps you find yourself in this role, in this difficult role, in such a complex role that a woman has. A woman, a young entrepreneur. Tell us a little bit, well, don't tell us how you started, but tell us how this scenario has changed from the time you were a young entrepreneur. Well, I want to think that I'm still young. Okay, let's start by saying that. But, well, perhaps not as young as Mariana. But let me tell you, Well, I believe that I want always to think that entrepreneurs are very young because you bring about this energy and this willingness to do new and different things. But definitely the world has changed a lot. I am the oldest young entrepreneur because, well, we started back in the 80s when we didn't talk about entrepreneurship, when there was no such thing. And not only in Mexico, to talk about entrepreneurship was not common at the time. In those days, they would tell you, well, you don't have a job, and until such time that you find a job, why don't you do this instead? But the reality is that for us, well, we started with a group of friends. We're still working all together. This group of friends is still working together. And when we said we want to do something that is ours, when you're in a Latin American country, in our case in Mexico, where really the big companies are being there are from generation after generation. They started with a traditional industry, let's say more than 100 years ago. And you want to start up this new initiative in terms of technology and something led by a woman. Well, something in something that we didn't speak much about. So there were lots of elements that would lead to the lack of trust in what we wanted to do. We did, of course, we didn't talk about any seed capital or anything of the kind. And I'm going to be insisting about this. The key to entrepreneurship has to do with the passion, how convinced you are about what you want to do. Perhaps you might be missing some capital, you might be missing some government incentives, but what cannot be missing is that firm conviction about what you want to do and why you want to do it, to really feel that passion. The fact that we are now found in most of the continents in so many countries means it was a result of that determination that we all had. I would like to say that we could, but we didn't have any government support. And I'm talking that we are in Asia, we're in Europe, we're in America. So we're still a private company. We've never been able to go public. We're still in this Latin American society. So, well, if you analyze this in depth, what we always had is this passion, this sense of reaching out for China and looking at this soft tech advertisement just placed in a building. I'm forgetting the times when I didn't get money from the banks. I just want to remember what it means to be there nowadays. And nowadays I can tell you that all these new young entrepreneurs have a huge opportunity ahead of them because now you do have capital. Now you talk about young entrepreneurs quite often. Now you're still considering them heroes because they want to face against all the old barriers. We want to go across that failure sense. In the past, failure had very strong translations. I mean, so it was the signal you would be getting from the outside world. I believe that now we have huge opportunities and given also the needs because of everything existing in these ecosystems. So a young person can decide taking over this role and leave a trail and just attend to some social problems. This is why there's so many social entrepreneurs. So we are now creating value. I'm not talking about wealth, I'm talking about value. And I'll try to pronounce this well, LinkedIn, when you see about Uber and all these stories, there's a huge components. On the one hand, a huge need and the possibility of leaving some history, and there's some huge creation of value, how you can have an impact now. LinkedIn, Facebook, Uber have left a legacy beyond what the wealth they may have created as well. So this has changed, and I believe we still have to take advantage of this, and we have to see how to really push all these youngsters and those who are not that young so that we all just add up to this common effort. I'm paying for dinner tonight. Don't worry. Well, don't worry, forgotten. I won't forget what you just said. Para ser un joven.
Hard enough. But to be a young African entrepreneur, how hard it is?
It's a good question. I mean, you know, in my quick background is obviously the fact that we were living in Rwanda and we went through the 1994 Rwanda genocide. And when we went through that genocide as a family, you know, we lost everything. And I was quite young at the time. I could understand what my family is going through. So I felt like I wanted to and needed to do something about it. So I quit school at the age of 15. So I'm not the best role model for education. But quit school at the age of 15 full-time, and I set up a business. And I took a $5,000 loan to support my family. And I worked hard to kind of grow this business. So being a young entrepreneur and going through that, you do realize that the only way we, as young entrepreneurs, are going to be drivers of sustainable growth is if governments, and I think President Kim touched on this, is that we need to truly enable, empower, and inspire young entrepreneurs and women entrepreneurs in order for our economies to grow sustainably. And if you think about it, the key ingredients required in order to do this, and it's not an African issue, I think it's a global issue. Africa's very lucky, in my opinion, because 75 to 80% of our population is under the age of 35. So we have a very, very young population, which is why the Mara Foundation focuses on young entrepreneurs and women entrepreneurs. So basically, everybody but old men, we focus on. So, when you think about the whole drive, the only way the entrepreneurial ecosystem is going to work is access to capital, and access to capital in terms of debt and equity. Banks need to lend more to businesses and need to lend more to SMEs in general. President Kim touched on this. But also the access to equity. And the access to equity will come if governments really kind of encourage venture capital funds and seed funds, etc. I think that's a big drive. Silicon Valley, one of the key drivers for that economy, has been the fact that early stage funding has been available. The second element is informal education. I mean, as I can't pitch education, I'm going to pitch informal education, but informal education, in my opinion, is very important. Entrepreneurship is not taught in the education system today, and therefore mentorship is such a crucial piece to our young entrepreneurs and women entrepreneurs. So creating an informal education system through mentorship is, I think, very important. And lastly is government policies. Again, something that President Kim touched on. But government policies, that we need a mindset shift. Governments have traditionally been very, very focused as the answer to unemployment being foreign direct investment or large investments and large projects. It's not. The answer to unemployment is truly going to be nurturing small and medium enterprises. And the only way that can happen is by government policies working in a way that can truly work. And I think as entrepreneurs, as young entrepreneurs, we need to have a mindset shift too, which is, traditionally, especially Africa and Latin America, we've always thought about bringing Silicon Valley to Africa and to Latin America. Rather than that, we need to think about how we can take Africa, Latin America, and all these emerging markets to Silicon Valley. How can we create innovation in our own countries and take them global? LinkedIn's, Uber's, all these amazing companies have been great stories, but have been made in the US, and there's nothing stopping us creating that same innovation from our needs and requirements. Africa's evidence of that, where we have more mobile phone users than North America and Western Europe. The concept of mobile money was created in Africa. So we have the ability to be innovative, but we need to be daring, we need to be bold, we need to be passionate, and we need to realize that entrepreneurship is a journey, it's not a destination.
Why don't you identify the three main obstacles you are finding in your job in Africa?
I think the three main obstacles is access to capital, it's the right government policies, and it's the access to informal education. I think that's very important. But at the same time, everybody keeps on saying that the young are the leaders of tomorrow. We're not. We're not the leaders of tomorrow. We're the leaders of today. But we have to take that role very seriously too. I think passion is extremely important. You've got to dream big, but ethics and values is something that's very, very crucial too in order for these things to be sustainable in the long run. So I think the private sector can push and needs to push, but the public sector equally has a very large role to play in order to ensure that this ecosystem moves forward.
Jean? I think you said before that innovation and economic growth is not the only target, that you want to prevent that sometimes there are unintended social and environmental consequences of the growth. Would you say that business should adopt and young entrepreneurs should adopt a strong environmental and social standard before they start, growing?
Well, let me put it this way. So, in terms of opportunities for entrepreneurs, if we are even halfway sane in this world, there will be a price on carbon. And so when there's a price on carbon, there's going to be huge opportunities for innovation based on the fact that we'll finally get the incentives right. And the incentives will be that any kind of innovation that leads toward more clean energy, any kind of innovation that helps us, for example, to do what Sean's talking about, to revolutionize the way we grow food, any kind of innovation that will help us to build cleaner, more livable cities. And it's in the tech space as well. I mean, there's going to be a huge amount of opportunity there. So in terms of engaging with the environment, I think what I was saying is that there's, every single young person on Earth, no matter what their age, every single young person on Earth should get engaged in the issue of climate change. There's a huge reckoning that's coming. But on the other hand, because I think we will have a price on carbon soon enough, there's also this huge entrepreneurial opportunity. So I hope they'd focus on it. So that's my main message in the environment. It used to be that energy companies were completely against a tax on carbon, and now the majority of them are saying, look, just do it. We know you got to do it. We know that there is actually a cost to all of us for putting carbon in the air. So just calculate what it is and tell us, because we need to readjust our business plans according to the future tax. And we've already begun doing it. We know you're going to have to do it, so just do it. And so I just think that instead of seeing climate change as only the gloom and doom, if we can make some sane political choices, there will be a very exciting future where we will have cleaner, more livable cities, where even in situations that are very dry, we'll have great productivity in agriculture, where you'll be able to provide baseload energy with solar and wind power. All these things are right there in front of us. And so young people are the ones who have to both insist that we pay attention to the problem and take advantage of the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you. Sean, probably any human activity need leaders.
Need what?
Leaders.
Any human activity needs leaders.
Leaders. From your experience, again, do you see transformational leaders emerging from young entrepreneurs in Haiti?
Yes. I mean, our organization started with 30 Americans, and within 6 months, it's an organization where we've got about 5 non-Haitians and about 250 full-time staff Haitian. The leadership's Haitian. I feel like a bystander in a Haitian organization. And that didn't happen simply because we put a idealistic quota on it. It happened because people who knew their country's needs and had that kind of fortitude came in. And it was really what made us stay in Haiti. That we were able to get excited by our Haitian counterparts and ultimately elevate them to be the ones that designed our programs. I don't think that there's a leadership void. I think that many times the disconnect, I think what Mr. Blue suggested in terms of go home tonight and create an app, one of the things I would add to that is that because speaking for as we as Americans had gone into Haiti, I think that in connecting that to this one universal focus, which is the climate, that perhaps before going home and creating the app, so many of the young culture that spends so much time at the keyboard and so much time at the screen, which is the generation most connected and most involved proactively with moving towards a better environment, is the least connected to that environment. And I would suggest perhaps go to the natural world. And I think it's there that you'll find the inspiration for an incredibly profitable app.
Thank you. Okay. Alan, let me go for a personal question with you.
Sure.
Personal question that probably many people who is listening now want to, asking themselves, want to ask you. What do you have in mind when you start LinkedIn?
What do we have in mind? So, excuse me, we basically had in mind an idea that we were going to make anybody in the world as powerful as a Silicon Valley entrepreneur. We really believe the way work gets done in Silicon Valley is through networks of people. It's through people connected to others, trusted relationships, people I've worked with before, recommendations on who I should work with in the future. And it's played out over and over again. The real secret sauce of Silicon Valley is actually the recombination of people who have different ideas. So you take a group of people who've worked together, they go off and set up with new groups of people and learn new things, but take their ideas with them. So we believed that if we could build a network, that basically that could happen anywhere, everywhere, because everyone would be able to tap into that network and to be able to build, to make themselves successful, and to be able to build companies, to be able to build success for themselves and their communities. That's really what we had in mind. It's a deep belief that the last 15 years have seen not just change in technology, but that technology has brought change for all of us. The people who are so concerned about the environment and making change, they're immensely enabled by this technology. I mean, the amount of information that we all have at our fingertips makes us so powerful, so capable of making decisions. If I recommend you all go off and write an app tonight, I know you can do it. And the reason I know you can do it is because there are thousands of resources, both online and people who you can talk to who can help you do that. And you have access to them through things like LinkedIn, through things like Facebook, through Google. Everything you need to make it work is actually out there. And everything you need to be able to participate in making a difference locally, in the climate, in your culture, in your local community, is around you as well.
Okay. Mariana, ¿cuánta ayuda has tenido?
How much help have you had on your work? I'm speaking mostly about the public institutions. And if you have not had much help, it's time to ask for it. Well, actually, we had tons of help, and the fact that I'm sitting here today, it's a clear signal of this. As Blanca said, I have this huge admiration for her because it's true, and I imagine that many years ago it must have been so harder to start. If today it's hard, definitely we still are at a point in which entrepreneurship and the focus where I am, it's social entrepreneurship, has become something that is a reference point. It's something that people admire, and it starts in young people, this idea of, I can do something. I live in a city, in a country where I face these issues daily, and I'm not going to let this be handled by the government or the private sector. I have the opportunity to start having something that will change something. I think that's a very important issue. And I think that in our case, it has been a combination. Help has not been free, and to reach to that help has been one major effort. But obviously, we have a lot of doors that have been open to us. We have had help from the National Council of Science and Technology that helped us in our very beginning to escalate and to test our model to a little broader level, and it was actually I think it was the best example on how the government really can be effective sometimes. I went to a conference and I spoke about Laboratoria, and at the end of the conference, somebody from that organization said, I love this. This is what the government should be doing, this kind of projects, and that's how it came about. So we have had the luck in being in this environment where there is this thirst for entrepreneurship, doing innovative things. Obviously, there's more people every day that want to listen that Peru and Latin America is going forward and furthered by young people that want to take this risk. And we had an exposure that has been not only very important to make Laboratoria grow, but to appeal to the girls of the program and to have our passion overspilling on them, and to be able to expand all the benefits that we might have started with. Having said this, obviously, we still need a lot of support. So we are at a stage that is relatively the beginning. I mean, it's a year and a half. That has been a very intense year and a half, but we still are in our consolidation process to understand what's our way in which we can make money and escalate this, keeping our impact, social impact, which is our main focus, but to do it sustainably and being able to escalate. So, anyone interested to be involved in the space of education at modules and effective women in technology, we're open. I think it's a very important and interesting issue. The government role in the young entrepreneurship function. My experience of over 30 years of journalism has made me a little cynical about governments. So I have this impression that when government listens to the word social entrepreneurs, they become a little bit concerned. And I don't know if they are more help or a hindrance sometimes, but I would like to know your opinion, Blanca's opinion on this. At your experience, your personal experience, your enormous business that has a gigantic expansion in the world, hence you have had to deal with governments of all colors, shapes and forms, and of all characteristics. So what is your thinking on this?
I believe that when we talk about fostering entrepreneurship, we have to talk about a full ecosystem. Without doubt, the government is a fundamental part, but at all levels, start from the level of education, for example. I'm sure that we've all must have thought at one point about thinking the education of an entrepreneur in terms of careers or full preparation, but think about those children who are at primary school, that child that wanted to do something different and they don't want to follow the teacher's instructions. So she was sent to the headmaster's office and so that was somebody who wanted to break the laws and do something different. So those are the children now that you start fostering or promoting that they do something different. When we think about the government's role, of course, it is a role player with no doubt in the terms of how they facilitate things. You were saying a while ago that how fast it is or how easy it is to open a company in just a couple of days. Of course, in Latin America, it would take at least a minimum of a few months. Governments do have a role in facilitating things so that we can accelerate this. And these were the first ones to just give this economic support to the new entrepreneur. But the private initiative, the private sector also has an important role. We also have to spur this development. What we do, well, I say that we are the result of an entrepreneurial culture because we do have initiatives so that our people might come up with new ideas and we help our people to launch these ideas. So I believe that the combination of private sector and government turns to be quite vital and fundamental. It's good to get a good balance. Of course, also the cultural aspect. How are we really spurring or pushing our children or the youngsters and helping them to be part of the change? But again, the government should just set forth the conditions. In some countries, they say, at least if we don't get any support from them, at least let them not put obstacles in our way. But nowadays, our governments, and I believe that this is being done in certain cases, they should give us some responses. I have to help you because you in turn will help me solve some problems. So this goes way beyond the simple job creation, but we're talking now about getting solutions to our problems. There are some governments that understand this better, and I think that those are the governments where we see that this huge involvement in everything that their countries need. Countries like in Africa, what we have heard about, things that are happening in India, there's so much to be done that at least you have to be given the possibility of doing something. I would say, with no doubt, the governments have a very important role, but all of us who may have some way to assist, either as cheerleaders or coming up with capital or just simply facilitating the way, we are going to be helping and creating a much stronger ecosystem. But of course, the governments can always help us more and more. We all want to get this support from our governments, but I believe that there's a mutual need. The government needs from us and we need from them. And the governments really have to set forth the conditions so that we might assist them in the solution of the problem. And Mariana, of course, if you need investments, I am a woman, not as young as you are, but I can give you any support you might need.
One of the great ways to help Mariana's and Mariana's organization is to hire the girls she trains. So if you own a business, go out and hire one.
Blanca, uno de los derivados del papel del gobierno es en ocasiones la corrupción. Es un obstáculo la corrupción para los jóvenes emprendedores. Curiosamente, los jóvenes emprendedores son más necesitados.
We could say that they need more in those countries where production is higher. Quisiera también...
Blanca.
Primero, muy bien. Yo creo que la corrupción...
I believe that corruption is a disease that affects every possible activity. But I believe that even though it might be very painful to see, well, sometimes we see that the governments say that they're going to be allocating certain amount of funds to promote entrepreneurship. And there we see that perhaps they just send those funds towards another path, because you might, if this happens, you might see that you're sacrificing the future of these young people. But, well, corruption affects all the activities, but it is very, very sad to see how corruption is involved in this type of activities because, again, I insist, we're just sacrificing not only the future of the current entrepreneur, but you're also going to be affecting the impact that that entrepreneur was going to be having. Unfortunately, corruption is everywhere. You will find corruption in every space possible, and unfortunately, this occurs in many of our regions. But we will have to find ways to just avoid this corruption. Perhaps a good entrepreneur might find how to make this corruption visible. So perhaps we have to go into social entrepreneurship, and by doing this, perhaps we can make all these corruption visible so that we might work against it.
Los gobiernos en África, ¿ayuda u obstáculo?
Africa are a help or an obstacle?
I think as a whole, there's been an amazing transformation where there's a lot of help coming through now. You know, to the earlier point that in Latin America it takes a few months to set up a company, in some African countries it takes a few hours, not even days. So it's a perception versus reality issue, unfortunately, which we need to fix, that the continent does have a lot of good news and has a lot of transformation taking place. So in a lot of cases it's help, and I think on the issue of corruption, it is very important and we all need to tackle this, but we've got to remember that there will only be takers in corruption if there are givers. So it is a two-way street. It's equally our responsibility as a private sector not to get involved in that game. It's, you know, if you're working in a straightforward way, and I think, you know, I've done business across Africa for the last 19, almost 20 years, and everything we've done across 25 different countries, everything is 100% above board. Now, have we faced frustration? Yes, in some cases we did. And the way we got our word out is that we put a full-page advert the next day in the newspaper saying exactly who asked me for what. And every time we did that, people lost jobs, heads rolled. But you see, it's very important for the private sector to equally have that responsibility and have that voice and have that conscience. Because it is a two-way street. It's easy to sit outside and blame government. That's the easiest thing anyone can do. I think it is a two-way street. And we have to hold our governments accountable, especially as young entrepreneurs and women entrepreneurs. I mean, the taxes we're paying is for them. And this is why when it comes to public policy changes, there's some very simple things that can be done. As young entrepreneurs, when I started off, you know, I didn't even have a registered company for the first few months because I didn't understand why I needed to. Why should I set up a company? Why should I pay tax? Well, what is my benefit as an entrepreneur directly? I'm losing. But when you start educating entrepreneurs that the importance of setting up a business and then being able to get debt in the future, being able to raise equity in the future, all adds up. But governments can help this process by even creating tax brackets and, you know, creating an age limit and a tax limit, etc., where it encourages the informal sector to become a part of the formal sector. African governments, it's been very encouraging to me, from what I've seen, is that they're really understanding and appreciating the role young entrepreneurs and women entrepreneurs have to play in our economies. So it is changing. Are they doing enough? I mean, we always need more, naturally. But it is the private sector's responsibility as well. It's a two-way street.
Unfortunately, I have to go to another meeting, but I just leave you with a couple of quick thoughts. First of all, this has been an inspiring, a great panel. And I just want everyone to know that I'm going to write about this, and I'm going to put it on my LinkedIn influencers page. And I am now up to 996,000 followers. So if all of you in the room and all of your friends follow me as a LinkedIn influencer, I'll get to 1 million. Thank you.
Thank you. Very good. Thank you. Let me occupy the president's seat only for a while. Don't worry. Sean, I would like to hear your opinion about this issue, the role of government in young entrepreneurship.
Well, listening, I was thinking about, you know, my mind drifted to the current electoral situation in the United States. And what has become...
That was not my question, but go ahead.
And what has become an extraordinarily unpredictable system. And I see it as an opportunity to, you know, I don't think that there are governments that function at all without a citizenry that participates. And when I think as it connects to young entrepreneurs, to entrepreneurship, we also, if we have any vision now, it seems reasonable to consider that in the next quarter century, it will no longer be value added in terms of quality of life, will not be more accessible to the wealthy than the poor. That it's the first time in human history where, whether it's due to climate change issues or dirty bombs, wealth alone will not assure comfort for you or your families. And so, given to marshal that which will support business and passions, is to marshal those visions and technologies and investments that are not only for one's own benefit. And I think that the younger people are the ones who feel and know that the most because they're going to live the most of those times. And so I think when we talk about you know, where governments come in. Now more than ever, the technical access is there to lead the government, for citizenry to lead the government by small groups and small actions as much as big groups with big actions, by individuals. And because it's the entire paradigm shift makes everybody the potential visionary of where the new world's going to go. In my own lifetime, 75% of the big fish in the sea are gone. And if those trends are going to be reversed, if there's going to be a life worth living with wealth, then that's a life that's going to share that wealth with the rest of the world. So I think that in terms of, rather than answering the question, it's a question that I would say is very much on my mind, and that I would encourage beyond others, that we break the mold and the conditioning in terms of where we think governments stand in our lives, in terms of their responsibility, when we haven't taken the responsibility ourselves first.
This is one example. Sean, this is one example of when an answer is much better than a question. Thank you. Thank you very much. We have here some questions from the audience online. One is for you, Alan. It's about, you spoke before about tools, the tools that are needed. Some people want to know how they use your tool, LinkedIn.
Wow, okay, so thank you for giving me an opportunity to plug my product. As I said, the sort of the key piece and the foundational idea is working with other people to make great results. So the most important thing you can do with LinkedIn is have a network, help those people achieve their goals. They're going to help you achieve your goals. That's kind of the magic of the way the system works. When it works, that's why it works. There are a bunch of other things that I think we can do. I was thinking about the government question and also about ecosystems. So the unpredictability of the American electoral system is absolutely a factor. But when I've talked to people in Washington about the kinds of things they actually care about, one thing I will tell you for sure is the case, that they care a lot about jobs, they care a lot about economic improvements. Whether I'm talking to the people on the far right or the people on the far left or anywhere in between, they all agree on this. And I've actually found that outside the United States as well. You talk to the King of Jordan, you talk to the leaders of the UAE, all of them care about building these kinds of opportunities, and they know that if they can find out the right way to push the right buttons, they can create something great within their own countries. So government can do a lot, but government could not make a better investment than investing in the people who are going to enable that entrepreneurial economy to function. So the two people who you need to invest in, the two areas I think you need to invest in are infrastructure, which is primarily about making sure that whatever seeds get planted, they have a chance to grow. And the second one is education. And not just traditional forms of education. I actually think the work that you're doing is the beginning of a huge wave of entrepreneurial effort in the world of education. The way you're training people is a way which is actually, it's beautifully aligned with the things that people need to do in their work today. So use a tool like LinkedIn or whatever to form those relationships, but if governments become involved, let's make sure that they figure out a way to align the things which entrepreneurs need in order to succeed. Capital, yes, but most importantly, make sure the ground into which those entrepreneurs plant their seeds is as rich as possible.
Alan, sometimes I ask myself if you are creating false expectations or at least too much expectations about the value of technology. When we say our young people that with this you can get everything you dream, I would like Here I would like you to elaborate a little bit about this. How do you see that?
Sure. So I think I entirely understand. I am a great believer that this kind of technology actually opens up unbelievable new vistas. When we talk about all the problems that we need to solve as a planet, for the most part, those problems are going to be, the solutions are going to be technology solutions. And the reason is that, and if you haven't read, I can recommend a good book here, if you want to think about technology and the way it's changing. It's called Abundance, and it was written by a guy called Peter Diamandis. And basically, it talks about the way in which technology can change the world. But its fundamental idea is this. If you look at all the people who are living in the world today, and all of them want to live like a Western European, say, we need 4 planets worth of resources at the current consumption level to be able to support the way people live. And that's just crazy, right? It's crazy for 2 reasons. One, it's amazing. There's an amazing amount of waste. But the most important thing is that no matter how much recycling we do, no matter how much conservation we do, we won't get there. That is not enough. So the solutions to these problems are going to come from the technology that we put against it to develop new opportunities. And maybe 20 years ago or 30 years ago, it was hard to believe that the technology would actually be capable of solving those problems. But when you look at what we're capable of today, just the change that we've seen in the last 20 years, it suddenly becomes something to be optimistic about. Because we are not even halfway there. But last week, 3 separate announcements in 3 separate countries about people building public transportation systems which were basically self-driving. That is literally something that couldn't have happened 2 years ago. That's the speed with which it is going. So every time somebody becomes an entrepreneur, it generates opportunity for everyone. Every time somebody becomes a technology entrepreneur, it has the potential to write the next chapter in the way we live our lives.
Mariana estaba... ¿Quieren aplaudir?
A great applause. Mariana was nodding while Alan was talking. What is your opinion, Mariana?
Power of technology and the power that these devices represent is, it's really hard to put into words. What we are trying to do at Laboratorio is really to develop a new system of job-oriented education where people get the skills that they need to go and work. You know, right now still higher education and university is the main way to get in a professional career, but unfortunately that's extremely inaccessible and it's not equitable in terms of access. And to do so, we are using technology. You know, we always laugh. The best ally to learn to code is Google. Like, all the information is out there. And the girls that come to Laboratoria, they often have only used Facebook. You know, that's their connection to the internet. And getting them to realize that really they just need to realize that it's all there to learn and that they can learn on their own. I think that's the greatest change, mentality change that we need to make happen so that people start taking advantage of all the resources that are online to educate themselves, to learn, to basically to start building a better future.
And it's about, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'd just like to add, because along with that, one has to exercise a very healthy skepticism about the information that is online.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I totally agree. LinkedIn, though, don't worry about that. The great thing about it is the education that Mariana is talking about is valuable for creating entrepreneurs, but it's also valuable for connecting people who aren't going to become entrepreneurs, but want to work in companies that basically take advantage of the way work goes today. So in the United States today, we did a study with the Alcoa Foundation, which is a big advanced manufacturing conglomerate basically in the US. They said they had 600,000 open jobs doing advanced manufacturing roles. Advanced manufacturing is essentially advanced materials, building very complex technical artifacts and so forth. 600,000 jobs, and they simply can't fill them. And the reason they can't fill them is they can't find the people who have the skills to do it. And they expect that number in the US to grow to 4 million by 2025. Those opportunities are out there, and those are great jobs. They are fantastic jobs. They pay $75,000 a year, $100,000 a year. If you can be a welder on an oil rig in the Gulf of Mexico, you will earn $120,000 in your first year. You just need the skills to get there. So figuring out a way for education to come together with the way in which we, with the needs of our workforce is a tremendous opportunity. And the kind of work you're doing is, I think, fundamental to leading that change.
Mr. Moderator, if I can just add one thing. I think the importance of what Alan is saying is so crucial because the scalability, because of technology, is just unparalleled. I mean, our foundation launched an entrepreneurial tool, which is for mentorship, which is called Mara Mentor. And it gives guidance, advice, hand-holding, support, training, competitions to young entrepreneurs and women entrepreneurs on their phone for free. And we launched it in Africa less than 12 months ago, and today we have over 650,000 entrepreneurs on the platform. And now, wearing my other hat as the new chairman of the United Nations Foundation's Global Entrepreneurship Council, we're going to be launching this platform in 193 countries on the ground through UN bodies. So that kind of technology, the scalability, we're projecting to touch 10 million entrepreneurs within the next few years. You couldn't be able to do that without technology, and it's free, which is the most amazing thing. And it gives the ability to link entrepreneurs with amazing, successful entrepreneurs like Bianca and others who are mentors. And even people, amazing guys like Sean, who are kind of inspiring people not only in the arts industry, but also in the giving back space. So it gives the ability for people to, mentees in countries all around the world, to connect with mentors everywhere.
Blanca, hay una pregunta.
There is a question, different questions that value your words on the role of the governments in the young entrepreneurship, but they want to ask you, how do you think that the big corporations can help small businesses, young entrepreneurs, to develop and to accept them as competition without the intent of destroying them? And that's why I was mentioning, I firmly believe in the role that we could and should play in incentivizing this. First, how can we help? Doing something of integration. It is difficult for a startup. Imagine a service startup that should have access not to the capital, but to the market, to be hired by the market. I think that the first road is to do this integration, this productive change, and to say, Mariana, all the girls that would graduate or go through your program, I will train. Or companies that are starting and I say, okay, we're calling your services, your products, I'm going to look how to hire your services and your product. And of course we have the government. The government should decide to hire services and products from the small business because oftentimes you don't have a lack of capital, but a lack of work, demand, consumption. Obviously, then we have an important role to play, also somehow being consumers, not only doing the mentorship that we were mentioning, but you said that to be, how not to block competition. Well, I think as long as we understand that at this point there's huge opportunities. I think that if you're mature enough, you don't see competition, you see a complement. There are huge opportunities for those who want and bring something valuable to the table. If you block a startup thinking that that will be your competition, something is wrong in your module. If you think really that this little small startup will destroy value for your company, then you're seeing risks instead of opportunities. And those huge entrepreneurs are coming to strengthen your companies. The idea is not to be companies that did not see how things like Uber or Amazon came about. You have to see how this could have contributed to your module. So the companies can help not only with mentorship, but also looking at these sponsors, becoming sponsors, if you want, in integration and exposing them to the market, in being the first ones that believe. In our companies, we have to further these things in our people. There are thousands of people working in your company, thousands of eyes looking at opportunities. Let these eyes and opportunities be built, or help them to build them within your company, or at giving them land to grow. And I think it's a responsibility, but it's also something selfish somehow, because they will help you in your own evolution. So you have to see them as those that help you in your evolution more than a challenge. If somebody sees that a challenge, a startup, will have to review their module very strongly.
There's one question for Ashish. Estamos hablando de los jóvenes emprendedores en lugares como África, pero alguien en la audiencia.
When is what going to happen?
When they are going to transform Africa.
It's happening. It is happening. I mean, I've been seeing it for 19 years, especially in the last 5-7 years. It is truly happening. Unfortunately, you know, people forget the size of Africa. I mean, we're physically larger than North America, Western Europe, India, and China put together. So we're a large continent. We are 54 different countries, 54 different laws, governments, parliaments, etc. So we unfortunately get generalized as one too much, and in most of the cases negatively, never positively. So I think it's happening now, and this is why it's the big opportunity. I mean, 6 of the 10 fastest growing economies in the world are in Africa. And this is why the purpose behind my book, The Lion Awakes, it kind of explains that. I mean, I remember, you got to remember when you're reading this book that I quit school at the age of 15, so there may be a lot of spelling mistakes. But, you know, it kind of it gives you a context of the perception versus reality of the Africa today, which is amazing, versus the perception that's out there.
Okay, thank you. And one last question for Sean. It's a question about who is going to win the next American election. No, just kidding. Just kidding, that was my question. No, the audience question want to know about young entrepreneurs in the movies industry. If there is something like young entrepreneurs in movies industry.
Well, the movie industry is not has always been a high-risk industry. And typically it started out, you know, where you defined by the companies that owned the movie theaters, this kind of 2-hour form that sold enough popcorn and Coca-Cola to make it an industry of value. Now, of course, on the high level and the kind of, you know, big genre pictures, the movie industry for people to get in on that level is not a startup. What there is now are these kind of crowdsourced things, and people starting to make movies because the access to the technology to make films, to tell stories on a much smaller scale to begin with is there. So, in fact, you're asking a question about a generation that's coming up right now that I need to catch up with to see what they're doing, but I think there'll be an enormous amount of product. What also is happening is that the legitimacy of the big screen is being shared now with what's at home. I mean, old people today, and by that I mean 19, don't want to go to the movie theater to see stories of content. They want to go home and watch those. They want to see them like you would do with a book club, where maybe your neighbors come over and see part of it on this night. You bend the page, you come back the next night. When they go to the movie theaters, they're going out to see usually the big genre pictures. And I think that, in fact, the content has probably gotten more provocative, more challenging on television. So I'm so out of the generation of it all. I never saw an episode of any of these shows that are on any of these networks that I don't know how to access. And so I'm somebody who's been asked this question, who's still alone in a movie theater watching, you know, a story movie with acting.
Ok, muchas gracias. Yo también hubiera querido pasar
Thanks very much.
a Blanca, Asís, a Mariana y a Allen, pero hemos rebasado la hora destinada a este panel y tenemos que terminar aquí. Muchas gracias por su presencia.